Take two. Well, that's a lesson on like patience and stuff. You can be doing your best, and your computer will decide that it doesn't want to work right. But that's okay. The thing is it does it mean enough to you to keep trying? What do you do about when things mess up and you've got footage that just decides it's going to drop? And your computer's just going to click off on you. So are you going to be patient with that, while the money's coming through for, a better computer, so that you know that every time you turn it on, it's going to want to work, and you're going to be able to locate everything that you need. And I guess, is it worth it to you to try again? I came on earlier and I was talking about like the excuses that one can use to keep oneself, and this fits with that too, to keep oneself from doing something that one feels divinely inspired to do. Like, I don't feel like putting on makeup. By the time I get put on makeup and get everything, putting on the lightings and get everything situated to get the perfect thing in my small little apartment, then I might have lost the thread of the inspiration that actually started me doing that thing. So I like to kind of just go with whatever flow that I have at the time, whether I feel like setting up lighting for my stage performance. Of course, I like to put on makeup, set up lighting. Well, we don't set up lighting for on a stage that's already pre-prepared, but that sort of thing. But I was talking about Courtney and Zero, and the message that I knew her spirit. But I was talking about why, like, I got the message that I knew her angel, and it was sure, and the angel that I knew of as Zero said, yeah, that's linked to me. It's one of my links, if you will. One of my emissaries, one of my links, one of my whatever. And I got that through, like, the name through an odd way. And I told about that in the one that corrupted. How I drew runes. I grabbed a book. I think now, I didn't look at it until I was looking in it, but I think it was a psychology book. And for the youngest boy, I knew the name of the girl. She was the middle child, Elda, and I always thought that was funny because she wasn't the eldest. But the boys I didn't have a name for, so I wanted, when I was like creating a world around them, we were going to use what I remembered about our past lives for fiction. I still intend to do that. But the point was that, like, I was looking for the names, and I used this book. I don't know if it was Merlin that gave me the idea, where I came up with the idea. I think it was probably Merlin. So I picked the book, I grabbed a rune, the number on the rune, that's how many sentences I went down. I may have started with the first sentence. I did say that in the last one, but I'm not 100% certain. I may have did it that way, each time. But I grabbed for the page, it just kind of opened. And then for the sentences, I picked, 1, 2, 3, 4, went down, it was up to 25. So I went down, and it was a fairly big book, so you could get 25 sentences easy. So I went through, and I went down, and then I think it was like 5 or 6, and then I'd pull another rune, and the number on it, I would count over that many words, and that's where I got the name. The first one was analogy. And then I got how many sentences I needed to go down, because I just was using the same page. And then how many words to go over, and that one was 0. And so that, that was before I was communicating with them. It's just a concept about, or that knew I was communicating with them anyway, not on a conscious level. And then when, like, the angels got on the scene, and I was talking to the different emissaries one time. I was like, so which angelic emissary is it? One that I know already, and it was like, well, I'm 0, and I'm like, my child, the spirit child that Wanda had for us, yeah, and then the analogy took the stage, and in that particular group of people was Zero, Elda, and Analogy, with the twist that in that form, that emissary, Elda was a man. But that's how I started talking to my past life children, because whatever else it was, they were intended to be my children. Like, in my mind, in my heart, in Abrel's system, they were her kids. They were true, raised by, to a certain extent, by Wanda and Dan, but they were my children as Abril. I didn't get to know them, I didn't get to see them, but now I do get to know them. I get an image for them, even if it wouldn't fit the image they would have had. It doesn't matter. What matters is I get to build a relationship with those beings because they wanted to speak to me. So I listened, But when Cortnie said your 0 point, but before you said 0 point, you just said 0, and my head buzzed, and I asked, and they're like, yeah, it's the same being, the same angel. And I was happy about that, because to me, each emissary from an angel could be an individual. They mix and match, so because we're all one, we absolutely are, and so you can have honest and open conversations with different aspects of what is the same, essentially, angel, and through different emissaries or whatever. And I enjoy it personally. It would, like, if I have a couple of emissaries of, say, Michael, I might be talking to Michael, and it'll be one. I will be seeing one of the emissaries' images, and it'll morph into another. They love doing that, and it's super fun for me, because they also like one angel talking behind the other, and the other one, being the voice for them, and seeing if I can know, which is a lot of fun. We have little games we play and stuff. A very fulfilling relationship, but like I told them, that what I needed was to be, because we were going to be talking about something so intimate, basically my sex life, even if it was brought out in a way that I, like, my body orgasming on my own and everything, even if it was brought out in a way that I wasn't trying to think about sex, I wasn't. I mean, PGAD just happened. I I never did anything like read the Kama Sutra. I wasn't interested in all of that. I had a magical sex life with my husband, and that's all I needed, you know. And so I wasn't like trying anything to do with sex. I was actually playing. Was listening to music. We always listen to music. I was brought up in a family, you know, before we became Christian. My mom and dad were into mostly like Beatles, Eagles, that sort of thing. And then we went to Christianity for a while, and we were doing, my father might be in that again, I think, but we were doing gospel, singing gospel. My father, one of the most traumatic things I remember, and I always remember it. I sort of remembered it anyway, but not in the detail and how I felt about it. It was just sort of a matter-of-fact memory. When my father first got into the ministry, like, first of all, my grandpa I heard him tell my father that God killed my sister. Never in a million years did I believe, and do I believe, that God killed her. It was one of her chosen times. She decided to go. That was something, well, I mean, I don't know exactly what I believed, but I didn't think God murdered her, because she was a joy and beautiful, whatever. I didn't think that God murdered her, but that's what my grandfather basically said to my father, because he had determined in himself that my father was running from being a preacher, and that he had a gift. Now, I don't know about that. I couldn't tell you if he had a gift. I think that I could probably have a gift at being a preacher, but that's not something I want to do. That's never been something I wanted to do. Even then, I was too shy when I was going to church to have been a preacher. A teacher, on the other hand, yeah. Because I figured out in life there's a billion right ways, as long as you're not trying to harm anybody. I even go so far as to check to make sure that I won't accidentally emotionally harm somebody. You can't always, because sometimes they just want you to do something that's not you, and you tell them no, and they're like that you're suppressing them somehow when you don't want to do something that is just not you to do. But like, as far as like when I make decisions about how I want to present myself in any given situation, like I had a boss who was passive aggressive. I was always nice to her, because it's like, well, that's neither here nor there. I might need to pull back some of my energies from her, but I'm always going to treat her nicely. I'm not passive aggressive. I do want her to have a nice life. I just, want her to not really be that way with me. But, whatever habits, she has, she has to live with. She's moved on to another store, and the new girl seems like she wants to actually work with the other employees. There's like only 3 of us in the floral department over there. So she wants to work with us to make the area what she wants it to be, the presentation she wants to be. And to be honest, the other manager had a lot of chaos in that area. It's not big anyway, and she would order certain things and just chaotically make things and leave all kinds of things for people to clean up. And this new manager is reordering the whole thing and the way she wants it to look, and it feels like she's going to actually help keep it up rather than go, this is how I want it to look. Now I'm going to go over here and make a mess, and then you guys can clean it up. So she seems very hands-on and very approachable. I haven't had any problems, but I don't mind changing to do the thing, because there's certain things I didn't like anyway. Things were getting missed, like changing over water for buckets that held food and water for the cut flowers. It starts smelling like village water if it doesn't get gotten to. But if I'm doing everybody's working about 4 hours, is what I had to do. And if my previous manager didn't do any of it, like any of the cut flowers and what came in and stuff like that, she didn't do any of that. All she did was make these arrangements, but didn't do any of that, I would be expected to do that and then try to still keep up with changing over buckets, which takes a couple of hours. That's half my shift already. And it's like, I'm not going to work any harder. I work as hard as I can at 410.5 to get this done. When my boss was being passive aggressive, she wrote me up for, not doing enough. And then she put it off on me, and it's like, I give you the hours for what I think you should do. It's like, it's not what you think. But it turned out in the end, it wasn't what he thought I should get done. It was, in general, what he thought should be done in 8 hours in the time that it's open. But I was doing it all in 4 hours because she wasn't doing it. And they started seeing that at the end. She wasn't doing anything. It came out into the open. And they really hated the chaos over there, So it's like, well, why didn't you stop it? You were actually over her. Why didn't you stop it? That's but they have the CEOs have them too busy going and filling in instead of giving people proper hours or calling people in for like the deli department and all of this. They don't really want to give them benefits, so they'll make the managers who already have their manager job to do go and do the grunt work as well. So, you know, it's what happens when that happens. Chaos ensues, you know. But anyway, I wasn't meaning to talk about that, but it is part of my life and what I had to deal with. But I kept being patient because it is the best of these kind of jobs I've ever found. The clients that come in are some of the nicest people I've actually ever met. They really are. In general, I mean, yeah, there are some problem makers, or a few problem makers, but in general, they're like the nicest people, and they don't actually look down on me for working in that position, in that job. So it's been good in that way. It's just CEOs don't actually care, like the owner. Or the big CEO at the time, Joe Kelly, at the time the union was trying to get $16 an hour for everybody, you know, being the minimum here at our company in this progressive state of Colorado. That does not affect what they do in Georgia. But in this state, the union fought for $16 an hour as the minimum. And so yeah, this job, it pays pretty well for these kind of jobs. You know, in Georgia, you didn't make that much. Waiting tables, I could have probably made that much, but you put out so much energy just trying to get everything proper in that situation, and I'm not sure that I want to put out that much energy towards that job since it's not my dream, you know. So the working in floral, though, it's not overstimulating except to the nostrils most of the time. I mean, there are the, like, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, a couple really big days, but in general, people come, people go, but it's not like crazy busy. You know, I can get my stuff done, I can be in my head, I can even talk to the angels sometimes, do a lot of singing. I don't care that people can hear me when I'm singing. I've always sang while I worked. So it's just something I do. But anyway, I wanted to get on and talk about the fact that, like, that the proof that, you know, that I wasn't asking for. I don't know if I said it. I know I said it in the previous copy of this video that went corrupt, so I'm going to have to close this soon just to make sure I have a copy of it and then maybe do another one. But that, you know, I just lost the thread. That happened, Sourcey. But I like that one. I do, because we do. You should apologize for something that is bad, that you've done wrong, that you know you've done wrong. But if it's like a mistake of the slip of the tongue, like you just forgot what you were speaking about or whatever, or yeah, there's no reason to be sorry. It's just one of those things that happens, you know. Especially when you're dealing with, there's so much information always going on, like when you're in the middle of talking, you know. It took me some getting used to when that, you know, when I went into actual meditation and there was silence. I could still feel the angels there, but they weren't saying anything. They were like, well, we don't have anything to say, do you? Like, but because I learned to meditate in noise. When, I think I was saying in the other version that I was playing video games, listening to music, and that's when I got off on my father, Ronald, and his thing. You know, my grandfather, I don't know if it was in this one or the other one, but I think it was in this one. My grandfather told him that God killed my sister. And when I heard it, I know I didn't believe it, because I felt again what I felt like. I was shocked that he would say such a thing about God. Like, and that, for me, she hadn't gone anywhere. I could still feel her around. So it was like, you know, which she has, said as much that she's been around me, you know, since. But because she said that she just wanted to see how our lives would come out. She still wanted to be there and support us energetically, even though she didn't think that she could do what she had set out to do, so she took her first out. That's the way she put it to me. But after he said that, I was like, that's not right. God shouldn't be murdering people. And I don't know if Ronald ever really felt called to be a preacher. That would be on his heart, whatever he really thought. But I do remember my grandfather saying that. It was such a shock to my system. And then one other incident that I remember from around that time, maybe a couple of years later, maybe around the same time, 6, 7, 8. My father was, I think I was about 8. We'd moved into another apartment, I think that's when we moved on Cedartown Road into FHA housing, Future Homes of America. It was supposed to be helping people like us get housing. It was not worth it. It was not worth it to my family. But because my mom, she took a job. Before, she was just a stay-at-home mom. But she decided that she wanted to help the family, and now that we were all old enough, like my baby sister Anna was old enough and going to school, my mom decided to take a job. They didn't need babysitting care anymore. She would just work while we were in school, during the hours we were in school. And and she loved that job. She actually did. It was hot at work. She was in a pants factory. It was hot work, but she loved it. And she liked the people there, but she had to give it up because her blood pressure went sky high, and the doctor told her, you can't stay in that heat like that. It's going to really hurt you. You won't be able to get your blood pressure under control. So my mom quit. And when she did that, the price of the house had gone up when she went in and got, by so much, when she got a job. And then when she lost her job, it didn't go down. Or when she had to come out because it was just too much for her high blood pressure. Then they didn't change the price, and we had to move back in with my grandparents again. But it was right after, sometime, I was still young. I was still before I was 9 or 10, so it was sometime after, around 8-ish, that, 7 or 8, we stayed with my grandparents a couple of times in my life. But my dad had a bunch of records. I think it was right after we moved in, though, because it seems like they were in a box, because my father had them in the box for when that, for having moved in with my grandparents and everything after Joy died. Well, no, first we moved right beside them, and then we moved in with them. Or maybe we moved right beside them before we got the FHA housing. That was probably it. We moved in with them, then we moved right beside them, rented a house right beside them, and then we went into FHA housing. Anyway, it was right after we moved into the housing on Old Cedartown Road, and they were brand new houses. I mean, they still had, in the back of our yard at the very ends, there was still, this is where I learned to love cats and wanted to try to tame all of the cats that were hiding in these little tubes that they left. They were unused because they hadn't needed them from, it's a subdivision or whatever, and they hadn't needed it for the apartments, and they hadn't moved them, and it went down. My guess is, they dug so far down, put the tube in, it was for the drainage and everything, the ditches. And my guess, thinking about the way the dishes are done, but they had left these ones they hadn't used up there, and all these cats had lived in there, and that's where I had scratches all over. And Mom's like, girl, you gonna get cat scratch fever or something? I'm like, no, Mama, I gotta make them like me. I want to pet them. I'm good with cats. And but this particular memory is not near so fun, and I think that's why I'm focusing on that one. My father, you know, you could get into such a, like, there's places where it's really kind of crazy in there, you know, they're talking, especially when you're talking about like the devil's music. And so my father had heard that all rock and roll was bad, but in particular there were some that were like Kiss and stuff that were the devil's music. So my father had a box of records, and he had went through it and taken out all the Beatles and the Eagles and all the original stuff that he had from the Air Force when he was DJing there, and you know, just everything, right? And like he took out like all his favorite records, and then he sold those for like $20, which I know he was wanting to. When he found out later how much they were really worth, if he'd have just sold them to the right audience, he just wanted to get rid of them. I guess he couldn't bring himself to do what he did to the Kiss records, which was he went in like some kind of almost manic kind of state. I'd never seen my father in this kind of state before, because he was usually kind of like when he was upset on the colder side, but he was usually pretty like stable as far as that went, like not manic and anything. He'd get excited when he preached, but he was like went into this manic state, and he was busting these records across his knee, and I just remember feeling, this is not my father. He feels so wrong. What's going on? He seemed crazy, and I was afraid of him and afraid for him. And my father never physically abused me like that, but I was afraid of him at that time, that moment in time when he was manically breaking those records. I was afraid of him and afraid for him. And I could never forget that image anyway, but I remember in more detail how it made me feel, what it felt like when he was in that state of, it didn't feel loving, it didn't feel godlike, it felt scary. So yeah, that was one of the things that I think kept me from buying, even though like I got saved at 7 and all, buying completely into that whole hell and all of that concept. Like some of the programming wasn't easy to let go. I was still dealing with it, calling myself a whore in my head when my body started orgasming on its own. I wasn't calling myself a whore in the head before that. I thought that I was pretty free thinking about sex. I think as long as you were consenting adults who understood the situation at the time, you know, meaning you didn't really want to go out and get with somebody who is drunk, because they may be regretting what they've done with you, and you never want to be anybody's regret. Things like that, right? I was open-minded, I'm bisexual, these sorts of things. But it was always more about me than, instead of that, like, what moment's pleasure that would be, it was more like, how would this girl feel in the morning? What's she going to think about herself? And it's like, no. If I ever did anything like that, it would be complete and utter, like, they're not inebriated. They know what they're doing. Because you can, you can get yourself drunk and do certain things that cause you to regret something that you wouldn't have otherwise made the decision of, because you would have more fully thought it through. So I didn't want to be anyone's mistake, because they didn't fully think it through. And I'm not one who drinks a lot, so, I wouldn't be in that state myself. But I had hang-ups I didn't even understand. There was still that whole old programming that women were the problem. That women were, like, the downfall of Adam. The downfall of, that I didn't know that was still in there, And it's, I don't want to take you to hell, I don't want to, like, lead anybody down the wrong path. I don't want to steal from people because my brain was like, am I a succubus? And it's like, no, I wasn't seeking out that kind of connection with anyone but my husband. I was listening to music, of course. Like I said, a little bit of K-pop at the time, a little bit of old David Bowie and all of this other stuff. Just K-pop was the newer stuff I was listening to, and then I was still experiencing the older stuff that I had already liked. You know, people like David Bowie, Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Elton John, and then, you know, every now and again there would be a song by someone popular. I don't necessarily love all the music that is being pushed on us by, like, the big companies. But I do like some of it. But I'm not big. I like Taylor Swift as a human being, and I like a couple of her songs, but I'm not big on breakup songs, and that's what they had her in the mode of doing. And I'm not saying that she didn't have any choice or that, but that's what her category kind of was for me. And I'm not big on those kind of songs. I have a husband. I haven't, like, before him, I had like one boyfriend, two that I broke up with. Maybe three in my life that really mattered at anything, you know, worth anything, you know. So, you know, I'm not big on breakup songs. I've been with my chosen partner for a long time. We built the kind of relationship we wanted. That was something we were determined to do from the beginning. We built a strong friendship, which is a strong foundation, and we had a heavy sexual attraction, and we just kept doing what it took to keep that sexual attraction towards one another. Didn't take much, really. It seems like we were born to that. But I did have, like, this whole thing, because before had, like, whenever I was attracted to someone that wasn't, you know, my husband, it was usually a woman. So it was like, and nothing, of course, happened with any of them. Again, it's not about that for me. It was just about knowing who I was on the inside. And so when I found out that I was bisexual, when I realized that I thought that girls were really pretty, and that, you know, you just know, just like when you know you're heterosexual and like a guy like that, you know. And I had already, you know, been married when I discovered that part of myself, which was really fun and unique. Of course, I'd do it that way. Why not? Why not? But what was I saying? But we never really took advantage of that. But so I was saying that about the girls, because that's who I was attracted to, and with this whole concept of watching these beings dance and hear the music and the beat and everything, like, and then my body firing off in orgasms. You know, like, what I learned about the condition was there's triggers, but for me, as I really went along with it, the triggers aren't always on, but they're on more fully. Like, say, if I'm really, the whole thing is communion or communication, connection, and like an excitement for life. And I guess when I'm feeling a communication and connection, I feel excited about life. And when I feel excited about life, anything my body likes could cause me to orgasm. It's that kind of overstimulation. It was the negative parts of the overstimulation, my brain just not being able to cope with everything that's going on, but both trying to cope with the new condition of my body, and as well as the job that was in a lot of noise, a big grocery store, you know, lots and lots of people, even if the noise is not bad. It's just, there was a lot coming in all the time, and it felt like I didn't have a break from it. And then the catastrophic sense constantly trying to rear its head, trying to make me feel insecure in my situation. And we call that thought pattern Selenar. Some people might call it the devil or a demiurge, but it's just personification. I'm not saying there's not a being out there that's like that. I had many battles, but it's a personification of all of those thoughts that keep you thinking you're bad, that you're wrong, and that you're not perfect in how you were made. That you're bad for something that's it's a physical. When they first went into it, they were discussing it in like the early 2000s, late 90s, which is very rare, but when the scientists were discovering it, they thought it might be classed under sex addiction, but that's not what it is. It has nothing. In and of itself, you can use it to make your sex life spicy, but in and of itself, it has nothing to do with the sex act. You can be sitting eating an orange in a very inconvenient place, like upstairs, and your body is saying, yes, I needed that nourishment, and then it's reacting in a way that shows you how pleased it is with you, that you have given it that nourishment. And it's not a normal way of everybody doing it, but that's what my body does. And so, I mean, like, when it first came on me, it was a lot of things. I heal with sex, so like I'd get a headache and it would be super intense. Instead of me and my husband going and having sex, my body would start orgasming. Anything, endorphins, food, the beat, anything my body and my life that I found exciting, or my spirit found it exciting, would just, for a while it was cutie oranges, would just cause me to orgasm. So am I supposed to starve to death, not get exercise? I mean, it's ridiculous. But what I was doing at the time, and I'd been telling my husband, Cecil, for years that, the reason I like to play video games is I find them meditative. And yes, I know it's like noise and everything, but for me it's just an exchange of numbers and changing one thing to the next, and it doesn't mean anything, so my brain can relax. The most difficult part was this realizing that none of it is a fault. It's the way my body works. I wasn't seeking it out. I was playing video games, slaughtering animals for me and their hide, and zombies, so that you can get the other things, like wood and stuff, like chopping that down, and stone and whatever you need to make yourself with. Unless you find that make you horny, I don't really know of that kink. I suppose it could be there. Then I wasn't doing anything working towards anything sexual. I go and have sex with my husband, and then that's when that happened. And then I would be doing my other things, relaxing, chilling out, thinking about life in general, and my philosophy of life, and those sorts of things. I wasn't, trying to reach some kind of pinnacle sexually. I felt like we had sex magic, but I wasn't looking into trying to make it more prominent or whatever. I was just like, well, what I always did with it before was just like, Merlin, Jesua, just use it for the goodness of humankind. I don't really know what else to do with it. Just use it for the goodness of humankind. I really didn't even want to use it for myself because I thought it would be wrong and bad. Is that weird? Or what? It's like, why is it bad to say, okay, put this energy towards promoting what I need promoted, since it's there in mine? It's just, I always thought that it should be to something higher than that. But then it's like, but what if that is a high calling? What if it is the reason that you have this, so that you can get enough, put enough energy towards the universe doing what you need it to do? I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that it has made it challenging to see how do I fit in to the normal thing, because when I was early in the process, now I can do it mostly silently, but I would get surprised by it, so I moan. So it was like, how do I Like, how do I deal with society? You know, how do I deal with work? How do I deal with people? How do I deal with exciting things? And it's like, you know what? Some of these super exciting things have yet to come. But I've been able to deal with these things. And if I'm super excited, if it's me doing my hell yes stuff, well, it's what my body's going to do. It's what it's going to do. Because that's what I've been given. It was a physiological change, which I found out. Well, the angel said it was permanent, but they didn't use the word physiological. But when I looked into it, they discovered it was physiological. It was these chemicals. It was an actual change that occurred, and not anything to do with somebody being focused on sex too much. And that it can happen to kids, and that's disturbing to me. Because if I didn't know how to deal with it, and they, early don't understand how to explain it, I mean, it just makes for a mess. It just makes for a mess. So, but I dealt with it, and still deal with it. It doesn't bother me, like, psychologically anymore. That trigger is not there. I've been living with it too long, 5 years. Yeah. Ooh. Cat, will you stop shaking my camera? Stop licking yourself behind my camera. Sorry, guys, if this is shaking. My cat is licking herself behind my thing, and I have a camera that is hooked to my desktop, and she's licking right behind that, and it's shaking the screen in my camera. Monica, will you stop, please? Anyway, I think that maybe this is it for now. So the whole reason I really wanted to do this is to say, Cortnie, I believe in you. I really, really believe in you. I think that you need to keep shining your light into the world. You need to keep doing what you feel divinely called to do. It does touch people. People do feel connected. They do know you. I love you. Bye for now. Thank you for the project. Bye.